Good evening all, and welcome. I hope you're feeling safe in your own home, especially during these turbulent times, as there are those who would like to get to know the inside layout of your house a little bit too much. Be wary of people who might want to break in. Before we start, gentle reminder, we're nearly at 3,000 Twitter followers. When we hit that, we're going to be releasing prizes to 2 lucky winners who follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Be sure to follow me over there if you don't already. But for now, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. We moved into a house in the country about 4 months ago. Since we'd previously lived in an apartment, that means we needed to buy a lawnmower. Instead of putting out $200+ on a lawnmower when we have to move in a few years, we decided to hire someone to cut our grass. Initially, we went with a guy that my fiancé used to work with, but $65 every 2 weeks starts to add up, and I was looking for something cheaper. That brings me to Charles. Charles posted in my Facebook classifieds that he was looking for some lawns to cut this weekend, and he had a reputable company, so I sent him a message. Initially, Charles came off as nice. He asked for my address so he could stop by and give me an estimate. After stopping by my house, he sent me a message saying, "Damn, sweetheart, you've got a big porch." It made me feel kind of uncomfortable, but figured I was overreacting and started planning when he could come out. I told him my days off, but he assured me I didn't have to be home. I told him to come on Wednesdays. Wednesday morning, he messaged me. "Are you home?" I said no. 3 hours later, "Are you home yet?" "No, I won't be home till after 8. Charles then informed me he had a flat tire and that he could come tomorrow. Thursday, first thing in the morning, he messaged me. "Will you be home today?" I told him no. He replied a few hours later, "Hey, are you home?" "No, I told you I wouldn't be home all day. Are you still coming out?" He then told me his truck broke down. He was sending messages like, "Please don't be upset with me, sweetheart." At this point, I was getting really creeped out. I told him to just come tomorrow. Friday. It's actually my day off, but I woke up and left the house for the day. He messages me, "Hey, I'm coming. You're off today, right?" I said, "Yep, but I'm not home." "When will you be home?" "I don't know." He messaged me later saying, "Sorry babes, I was loading the equipment onto my truck and it fell and broke. Maybe I can come tomorrow." At this point, I was really creeped out and told him to never mind and that I was going to find someone else. On Saturday, I get off work around 4 or 5, check my phone and find multiple messages from him saying that he had cut my grass and I needed to come home and give him the money. I told him no, I'll cash app it to you. He started getting really irate and saying that I needed to give him the money now. I told him I would give the money after I got home and thought the grass was cut. I was honestly really worried he would be waiting at my house, so I got a friend to drive home behind me. He wasn't there. I sent him the money and I thought that was the end of it. Fast forward 2 months later, I'm on the phone to my fiancé as I drive to class, and he tells me he has to get off the phone because there's someone walking down our driveway. I ask what he meant, and he said there was a man walking around in our driveway and front yard. After I got to class, he texted me, telling me it was just a man who had come by to promote his lawn care business. I didn't think anything about it, as it had been 2 months. But later that night, I got home and saw a business card lying on my counter with the name of the man who had been messaging me earlier. I called my fiancé Mike at work and asked him how the guy had been acting. He said Charles seemed genuinely surprised that a man had come out and asked if he lived alone. I asked Mike if the man had stopped at any other houses and he replied, "Now that I think about it, no. After he left our house, he just left." Mike said he had seemed really desperate to help around the house and offered to cut the lawn, fix our porch, and remove any trash or scrap metal we had around the house, and then asked if we had any pests such as bats in our attic or anything. That especially freaked me out, as we do have a bat problem, and I had previously posted about it on Facebook. Mike then said what was really weird is Charles was very freaked out about the dog. He heard Max barking from inside and started asking a lot of questions like, is he big? Does he stay outside or inside? Does he ever go outside or does he stay inside completely? How big is he? Is he nice? Mike chalked it up to him being scared of dogs. He gave him a brief tour of the outside of the house, and then Charles got in his truck and left. I then told Mike that this was the same guy who had been messaging me earlier in the year, and Mike started to freak out. He said that Charles had asked a lot of really specific questions about who all lived here and how long they'd lived here, and where they were at the time. He said he tried to brush them off, but Charles seemed really insistent to know if Mike was the only one in the house. Before he left, Mike specifically asked him if he had cut the lawns here before or something, and maybe was thinking of the last lawn owners. But Charles told him, "No, I just happened to be out this way and thought I'd promote my business to the neighborhood." The worst part? I had taken my fiancé's car to work that day, which means my car was in the driveway when Charles stopped by. He thought I was home alone. I didn't contact the police because I thought I might be overreacting. This all happened a little while ago, and I really hope that we do not ever meet again. This happened about 6 months ago. First off, I work graveyard shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. and my weekends are Wednesdays and Thursdays. None of my local friends know where I live yet, and on our door we have a wreath that covers the peephole and doorknob, which has since been moved. My wife was not home when this occurred. She was thankfully at work when it all went down. I got home at roughly 7 a.m., excited to begin my weekend of gaming and spending time with the wife. The usual. I'm doing my normal routine of eating some breakfast, and after cracking open the bottle of whiskey I bought, start up my game. I use a pair of decent noise-cancelling headphones when I game, so I can't hear much of anything unless I pay attention. Around 8:30 a.m. I hear a knock. I heard this though because I'm just sitting in the lobby of a game waiting for my buddy to get back. I ignore it initially and go back to scrolling on Facebook while waiting. Not 10 seconds later, I hear it again and the doorbell rings. I now get up because it might be the landlord or something. Without checking, I unlock the door and it pushes open, and I get punched in the head, and I fall to the floor. I get up fairly quickly, and I bolt to my room where I have an old Lee Enfield rifle laying against the wall. I grab it and point it to the intruder as he's unplugging things from my PC. He sees it and yells, "Oh crap!" and bolts out the still open door. I call the police and let the apartment manager know what had just happened. The aftermath. So the police show up pretty quickly and take my statement. I tell them everything that happened, and the officer tells me he's sorry that it happened, and they'll send patrol around once an hour for the next week. They ended the conversation with, "If we catch the guy, would you want to press charges for assault?" Yes. Okay, sounds good. Honestly, we're probably not going to find this guy, seeing as nothing was stolen, and you weren't injured too badly. So, because I wasn't taken to the hospital, that means nothing happened basically. So they said that they were going to close the case. The other officers there asked me about the rifle I used. I told him it wasn't functional and that since it was so old I didn't need it registered, more of a prop than anything. I still had to show him, and the officer pulls the bolts open and does a general inspection and confirms there isn't a firing pin in the bolt. Turns out he was a weapons enthusiast. It's not relevant. So to the home invader who gave me a black eye, let's not meet again. I lived in a share house with 3 other guys at the time. However, they were all at their various jobs and I worked night shift at a nearby gas station. I was in bed after a shift, fast asleep, and I started awake, not really knowing why. There was a period of about 15 to 20 seconds after I began to wake up of silence, followed by a knock at the door. At this point, having just woken up, I was still trying to get my bearings. However, I realized that I must have woken up from someone knocking at the door. Another 15 to 20 seconds pass in silence, and I start to think maybe it was just a door-to-door salesperson or charity collections or whatever, and figure they must have left. So I start to relax a little at this point. Then the entire front of the house starts to shake, and I can hear what sounds like someone hitting the front wall with a sledgehammer. At this point, I can't really process what's going on. My first thoughts are since we lived across from a train station, it must be because of the activity there, maybe a freight train grumbling past. I don't know why I thought that, but my mind said it was the most logical thing. Then the banging stops momentarily, but resumes 5 seconds later. By this point, less than 2 minutes had passed since I woke up. However, it felt like my brain had only just started working. I realized now that at the very least, something was happening in the front of the house that I didn't really like. The bangs were very loud, and the house was pretty old and warped, almost entirely made of wood. At this point, I started to panic. I could feel the shaking frame starting to give under the blows. So I did the only thing which I could think of, and started yelling and screaming unsteadily at the front of my house. From memory, I think I frantically yelled something like, "What are you doing?" Almost as suddenly as it started, the banging stopped, and I heard some footsteps running away. For some reason, it gave me the confidence I needed to look around for a weapon to grab before I went out to confront whoever it was. I remember thinking the handle felt a little weird, and when I opened the front door, by the time I got outside, they were gone, almost as if they had never been there at all. I should mention at this point I was getting about 2 hours sleep a day before my graveyard shifts, so I was a little sleep deprived and I knew I wasn't really thinking clearly. So I started to question if anything had happened at all. When I went outside, I looked for any signs of damage to verify for sure whether this really had happened or not. That's when I saw the front door and realized why the handle felt odd. The flimsy wooden door had been struck next to the handle repeatedly and had started to splinter. If they had kicked the center of the door, I'm sure their foot would have gone right through. But they were kicking next to the handle, closer to the frame where it was slightly stronger. 1 or 2 more kicks and they'd have been inside. The police came later and I filed a report, but nothing was stolen and there was nothing stolen from the unlocked garage beneath the bedrooms. They were either too stupid to check the downstairs first, or weren't looking to steal anything, which really is the more concerning part. One night, I was sleeping. My husband was on night shift, my 3 kids were in their rooms fast asleep, and I was dreaming, although I can't remember what I was dreaming about. Suddenly, all the noises in my dream muted, and I heard an urgent but calm voice overhead coming from the sky saying, "Wake up, Amy. Wake up now. Someone is in the house. The kids, go get the kids." Immediately I awoke. I sat there in a daze like, what a weird dream. and I went back to lie down, but I just had a feeling in my gut. I got out of bed and walked around the house. All was quiet. I went to my son's room. He was sleeping and safe. I then went to my daughter's room. I opened the door and saw a black shadow standing by her bed. I flicked the light switch on, and there, standing by my daughter, was a man I'd never seen before. I was so scared I jumped on her bed, covered her body with mine, and just started screaming at him. The man hurried and jumped out the window, as our rooms are on the first floor. Her entire screen was bent and pulled out. He must have pulled the screen out and then opened the window, which wasn't locked. Luckily, my daughter woke up as I was screaming. She did not see the man. I called the police and my husband. Turns out the guy was a neighbor's brother. He'd been staying with him for the summer. He drank with my husband and neighbor and knew that my husband worked night shift and that we'd be home alone. When the cops interrogated him, he swore he had a drug habit and only broke in to steal items or money for drugs. He had no intention of hurting my daughter. I don't believe him. If that voice in my dream didn't wake me up, who knows what would have happened. The second time it happened, I was once again asleep. My husband was home sleeping next to me, and I was dreaming when again it all went quiet and the same calm but urgent voice said, "Wake up, Amy. Go to Nova. Nova is in trouble." Nova is my middle daughter. She was 5 at the time, and I woke up and flew into her room. Before I even switched the light on, I could hear her wheezing. She was having an asthma attack. I switched the light on, and my poor baby's face was blue. Tears were streaming down her face. I ran her to the bathroom, got her inhaler, and I screamed for my husband to dial 911. She took her inhaler, but it was too much. Luckily, the ambulance arrived and got her to hospital. She was in there for 3 days. I can't explain why this warning happened during 2 occasions where my children were in danger. Maybe it's a form of mother's intuition. Maybe it's a dead relative. Who knows? Has anyone ever had anything like this happen to them? I lived in a pretty average middle-upper-class neighborhood. 2 sides of my house were flanked by an old overgrown Christmas tree farm, and we were at the end of a quiet street. For some reason I had taken to leaving my window open at night for fresh air, and it was a good thing this sort of short-lived habit hit when it did. At 1 a.m. I hear this car door slam shut, and I think it's weird. We're the only house accessible here. 2 guys got out and they crossed our lawn to the side of the house that faces the farm and stood near a window to my dining room. Another sedan pulls up and 2 more guys get out. One has a chain and rope. At this point I try to wake my alcoholic parents, who assure me I was just having a bad dream. I go downstairs and watch them out the window for a bit while they're chatting and smoking. One goes to the farm and comes back. I try to wake my parents up, but now they're up and my mum's got the window open. My dad's loading his gun and has the police on the line. Something tips the dude off. Honestly, it was probably me shouting at my parents, and they leave right before the cops pull up. The cop tells us he'd up patrol and left. Makes me wonder why I slept with the windows open. It let me hear them all show up. I live in Australia. My house is on a hill and has an upstairs and a downstairs. I have the downstairs part, which has a kitchen, a fridge, dining room, bedroom with a TV, lounge and bed. One important fact is that I have a side yard above my sloped backyard, which can be accessed through the garage into the downstairs through a storage hallway. So, it all starts around yesterday as I was trying to get to sleep. I swear I could have heard footsteps pacing around the side yard. I brushed it off as I own 2 dogs, and it was probably just them. I woke up, however, to find one shoe in the yard It was an old Nike runner shoe, covered in dirt. I have 2 dogs, so I put 2 and 2 together and thought they'd found a shoe in the backyard and dropped it on the side of the yard, which is nothing out the ordinary. Fast forward to tonight. It's about midnight. I'm watching something on YouTube and I decide to call it a night. But I was hungry, so I got up to raid my fridge. But as I opened the door to my room, to the kitchen, there was an absolutely horrifying, skinny, wrinkly bearded man staring at me in the middle of the room. He looked like a crackhead that ran out of ice. And we have a crystal meth epidemic over here. He was wearing a 4-beer singlet with blue short pants. I promptly crapped myself hard and yelled out and tripped backwards onto my ass. And as soon as I laid an eye on him, he ran off through the storage hallway and disappeared into the night. At first, I honestly didn't know what just happened. I thought it was some kind of ghost. So I get up and shut the door behind me and run upstairs to my parents. They go down and say the place was trashed and the door to the side yard was wide open, even though I had locked it. That's when it hit me. I had stumbled across an intruder. But when I left the downstairs, nothing other than a chair was knocked over or moved. But when I came back down, a lot of the stuff on the counter was moved or thrown off, as well as chairs and a vacuum cleaner, meaning that he came back into the house and trashed the place in the span of a minute and a half. Nothing of value in my bedroom was taken, luckily, as I had a laptop and phone in there. The door was still closed, but from my kitchen drawer, one of the large kitchen knives were missing. We, of course, called the police, and they went looking for him. They say his description matches with a burglar who's on the run in the area. I think that since I closed the door behind me, when I went upstairs, he thought I was still in the room, and therefore didn't go in. But that's just my theory. But it's almost surreal knowing how close I was to potentially losing my life with my own kitchen knife in my own house. Either way, let's not meet again. This happened in 2007, when I was 19. I was attending college in what I thought was a very safe southern town, with a population of about 30,000 people. I was lucky enough to have a modest place to myself, because my family owned property in a suburban area that they no longer used. The house was very small, but sat in the middle of a 2-acre fenced lot with a lot of pine trees and shrubbery. So Saturday night, some friends picked me up and we went to a few parties. Hung out at their house, nothing major. They dropped me back off at my house around 1 a.m. I had 2 dogs that usually sleep in my room, but this night they were being restless. So I put them in the living room and closed my bedroom door so they couldn't keep bothering me, and I instantly fell asleep. A few hours later, I awoke and saw a man climbing in my bedroom window through the shades. My bed was pushed completely up against the wall by the window, so by the time I saw him, he already had a knife to my throat and a hand over my mouth. I don't think I intentionally left the window unlocked, but I'm a 5'11" girl and was almost out of reach from the ground. It was also incredibly narrow, maybe 1 to 1.5 feet high, 3 feet across. It never even crossed my mind that someone would or could break in through that window. My first feeling was absolute rage. I remember that more than anything, I could instantly tell I had no idea who he was. His cheeks were really hollowed out, and he was very thin. He was also older than me, maybe in his 30s. He said, "If you don't scream, I won't kill you." His voice was so calm. I remember later thinking that his tone was so normal, we could have been discussing the weather. He took his hand off my mouth, and he was bleeding from his fingernails. I told him I had money I could give him. He could have my car, and I just started rambling on about any possessions I think I had. He said, "That's not what I'm here for." To cut the conversation short, this lunatic held me down for 5 minutes or more, just talking to me. I asked him things like how he knew I was there, and he said it was a lucky guess. By then my dog started freaking out in the living room, and he seemed to get a little unnerved. He became more serious and started groping me, and told me to lay down. I had bunched myself into the corner, you see. When he let go of me just for a second, I was able to push him off and dive headfirst out my window. When I fell, I landed on a metal lawn chair that he'd dug up from the yard. I was only sleeping in my underwear when this happened, so in addition to all the scrapes on my mouth, my whole body got pretty bruised and scuffed from the fall. I immediately got up and ran as quickly as I could to my neighbor's house, who happened to be a state trooper. Time has never been slower than it was when I was standing outside banging on his front door. When he answered the door, I quickly told him what happened, and he grabbed a bulletproof vest, a weapon, and ran towards my house. His wife called 911 and gave me some clothes and helped me clean up a little. Running had taken a layer of skin off the bottom of my feet, and I had left bloody footprints on their carpet. They never found out who it was. My friend that dropped me off said they saw a man with red hair walking down my road. It was too dark in my room for me to know what the color of his hair was exactly. I could tell he was left-handed by the way he held the knife. The police were beyond unhelpful. They only told me that he had to have been watching me for a while to know that I lived there alone and which room was mine. A few years later, a man was arrested for a previously unsolved charge in 2005 of a girl a few miles from my place. He was never charged with anything relating to her end in 2005, but his semen was found at the crime scene and he lived in her building. He also had red hair and was left-handed. Moral of the story: lock your windows. This happened while I was an undergraduate student. It was summer, and I recently moved out of the dorms. I was excited for the freedom, but most excited to have our family dogs come live with me. He was my best friend, and the worst part of college was being away from him. I was the first to move into the house out of my friends. However, they would always come over to pre-game before they wanted to head to the bars. One night after drinking shenanigans, we stumbled our way back home. Me, being fairly drunk, headed off to bed with my dog trotting behind me. I left my friends to sleep on the couch. In my room, I had my bed against the wall with the door. The foot of the bed faced the doors. The light switch was next to the door above the foot of my bed. My dog's bed was on the opposite room. He had a good view of the whole room, and he wasn't allowed on my bed, but he really loved his dog bed and preferred to sleep there. I don't know what time this happened, but the light in my room turned on. I sleepishly roll over and see this big mannish figure standing over me. The next thing I hear was my dog going crazy, barking, growling, and just being incredibly fierce. The figure sprinted out of my room with my dog on his tail. That was the last I ever saw of him. My friend who was sleeping in the living room was like, "A man just ran out of here. We had no idea who he was." We didn't call the cops till next morning. We should have called them that night, but we were young, dumb, and buzzed, and I was underage. We did notice the next morning my iPod and wallet were missing. A friend found my ID on the street a week later, but we can't figure out why he'd come to my room and turned the light on. He passed my friends to get to my room, and the light would be seen from where they were sleeping. The one thing I do know is that my dog stopped whatever worse bad things could have happened. That evening, when we returned to bed, he jumped on my bed and laid next to me. I knew he would never let anything happen to me. So to the strange, mysterious man in my house, let's not meet. I don't think my dog will let you escape again. A few years back, sometime in 2015, it was a regular morning, and me and my family were at home. My family is very small. The only ones being me, my sister, and my mum. My mum at the time was cooking me and my sister pancakes for breakfast, around 11 a.m, when suddenly we hear the doorbell. Might I mention, me and my sister are both disabled. We're both in wheelchairs due to being born with a disability that doesn't allow us to walk or anything of the sort, so we really are quite dependent on our mother for protection. Anyway, we get a ring at the doorbell, but we ignore it since we aren't expecting anyone, and we don't answer the door to solicitors. A few seconds after that, the doorbell rings again, and the three of us don't really think much of it, but we thought it was a bit weird, so a few minutes pass, and the doorbell is still going. Now we're a little bit scared, and when we suddenly started hearing rustling in the windows outside, my mum decided to open it. When she did, there was an Asian girl in her late teens attempting to pull the frame off our window. She had a blue Walmart bag filled with God knows what, but it looked heavy. The girl immediately stops what she's doing, and my mum yells, "What do you think you're doing?" She backs away from the window. We had noticed a strange black truck parked right in front of our house, and we could see two other people waiting inside it. We live in a small neighborhood and are unfamiliar with this truck. So the girl backs away and says, is Michelle here? My mum says, "There's no Michelle here, get away from our house." My mum was swearing a lot because she was scared. It was just us at home, and there was no one to protect us. I was really scared. My sister was crying while we ate our pancakes, and the girl immediately ran off as my mum got louder, and she just kept on asking for Michelle. The girl ran to the mysterious black truck, and it peeled off. My mum began freaking out and called the police. She gave them her description, but they never came to investigate. That day, my mum made an appointment to get us ADT home security. That night we all slept in her bed, because the room that the Asian girl was taking the window off was mine and my sister's room. My mum stayed up all night, walking around the house with her axe. No one tried getting in after that. And the next day, we got our home security with cameras and all that. Since then, no one ever tried getting in again. After talking to our neighbors about this, we learned that these mysterious intruders were returning. The same people robbed our neighbors. They weren't home at the time of the robbery, but they caught it on their cameras. They stole a few things, then left. Thank goodness we were safe though. So dear Asian girl asking for Michelle, let's never meet again. I'm a female. Back when I was 18, my mum had been doing work in the garden, so she was exhausted and went to bed early. It was winter, so it got dark early. I knew I would be the only one awake for the next few hours, until her partner got in from work at 4 a.m. I went about my usual nightly routine, rolled a joint and went out back to smoke it, as I did every night, and wasn't allowed to smoke in the house. The house had 2 floors, and my bedroom was on the top floor. After I had my smoke, I went back upstairs and continued watching whatever. About an hour later, I decided I would have one more joint, then head to bed. I finished rolling and got myself ready to head out into the cold. But just before I headed downstairs, something on my phone distracted me, and I sat back down on the bed, concentrating on that. When a minute or two passed, I heard a loud bang from downstairs. I thought to myself, it's just my mum's partner coming home. Then seconds later, I realized I didn't hear the front gate open, didn't hear the taxi pull up outside, and didn't hear the front door open. My cat is on the bed next to me, so it wasn't him, and my mum is asleep next door. So what could that bang be? I grabbed my taser and stuck it in my dressing gown pocket and go into my mum's room. Normally, she's such a light sleeper, but because she was exhausted from gardening, she slept through the noise. I wake her and tell her what I heard. She gets herself ready, grabs a metal pole, and we head downstairs. I insisted on going first because my mum is like 5'6" and 130 pounds, has MS, and is holding a flimsy metal pole. I figured my taser would be a little better should we encounter anyone. Looking around, everything seemed fine. However, the last room we checked is the bathroom, which is on the ground floor, to find that the window that sits just above the bath is wide open, and our 2 1-liter bottles of Tresemme shampoo and conditioner, which were on the windowsill, had been knocked to the bath. Of course, we're confused. How could this happen? It couldn't have been the wind. Now we're scared. It's 2:30 a.m. at this point, and my mum calls her partner to tell him someone has just tried to break through the window and to please come home. Oh, it's probably just a fox or something. Go to bed, you're being paranoid. That's his response. So we're like, well, you're no help. So they call the non-emergency police number to try and report it. 5 minutes later, 4 police cars and dogs all turn up. They look around, then come to the door and ask the obvious questions, after doing a walk around the house and area. They come back again and ask, do we usually keep our plastic garden chairs under the bathroom window? We do not. The police advise us that a dodgy gang have been going around the area trying doors and windows to breaking and steal whatever they can. They must have taken the garden chairs to stand on top of them to get in. The police also advised that a house a few streets over had just been broken into and everything was taken and the house destroyed on the inside. I don't think they were ever caught. The thing that freaks me out the most, had I not gotten distracted by my phone before going out to the back to smoke, I would have been outside sitting on the same chairs in the pitch dark where the intruders would have come around and seen me. And who'd have known what would have happened if that would have occurred. So to whoever was trying to break into my house, let's not meet. This happened to me a number of years back. I was home alone, and my boyfriend had gone to work. He works the night shift, and I usually work on weekends as I'm studying. I was just chilling, playing some games, and talking to some friends, while generally just enjoying my free time. My boyfriend can't message me from his job, so I'm just trying to make the most of my time before I go to bed. It must be around midnight at this point, and I look at my phone and decide, given the time, that I might as well call it a night. I start unplugging my consoles, which is a ritualistic thing for me to do, as I have this fear that they might catch fire in the night. So after unplugging everything and getting ready to hit the hay, I start putting on my nightie when I hear something in the distance. At this point, it's important to note that we live in a block of apartments, but this block of apartments is on the outskirts of town, and there's only one entrance with a whole lot of woods surrounding us. I was listening intently as we were on the ground floor of these apartments, and I looked out the window without turning the light on. There, from the underbrush, I could see a guy, followed by another guy and another. Within about 15 seconds, 6 men, all fairly tall and strong, dressed in black, most of them with masks of some sort covering their head. The traditional hat ski mask thing. I start to grow anxious. What were these guys doing? Surely there wasn't a who looks like a thief more contest going on in the middle of the night that I hadn't heard about. They start looking around the building, and seeing as I occupy one corner, or about a quarter, of the downstairs space, after they go round a corner, I could no longer see them, but I pressed my ear up against the window as they were no longer in view to try and hear them. They weren't exactly being quiet. They were making plenty of noise and trying to fiddle with the front door of the building. Now at this point, I'm starting to get nervous. Are they going to break into someone's flat? I really hope it isn't me. I listen, and that's when I hear an all too familiar click. However, the reason is because moments before, there was someone coming down the stairs. The person going down the stairs obviously ignored these would-be intruders, went right past them and carried on. There was no conversation, no noise that would indicate any altercation, and then the door didn't close for several seconds. Looking through my peephole now, I'm sure they weren't residents here. Not that I could recognize them with masks on. Why would they wait for someone to open the door, which they were fiddling with beforehand? However, I'm trying to not let it get to me and not assume the worst in people. When I look through the peephole, again, I see them looking around the 4 possible doors that they could try and tackle. It's either that or the flight of stairs. The entrance to my apartment in particular is just behind the stairs. I see them looking, individually looking at each door, trying to make a decision as to which one they're going to go for. And that's when 2 of them make little hand gestures and point to my door. It's important to note, the reason I can see this is because there's an automatic light sensor which triggers whenever someone comes in the proximity of the lobby. So, I could see them perfectly, but they could not see me through the peephole. They start pointing to my door, and I feel my underwear fill with fear. I knew that they were going to target my home. At that moment, I really, truly wondered if police could get here in time. I felt so stupid. Why hadn't I called them before? I try as quickly as I can to walk towards the kitchen, where I grab the landline phone and start dialing 999. When the operator gets on the line, I tell her immediately what's going down, and that there are 6 strange men in my apartment complex eyeing up which house to rob, and they are just about to open and break down my door. She's being not very helpful, asking if I'd witnessed a crime being committed, because currently they hadn't done anything, and I told her that they clearly didn't live here and were trying to break into the apartment complex. At this point, she says that she's going to send someone out immediately, and after saying if I wanted to stay on the line or not, I tell her I'm going to leave the phone on the counter, but that I need to see what they're going to do, and that if I don't come back in 5 minutes, to tell them to hurry. And if she hears noises, well, that's self-explanatory. I go back to the peephole, and there they are. By this point, 4 of them are looking at one other door, and 2 of them are looking at the door next to mine. I really am starting to grow nervous, but hopeful that the police would be here in time to catch these goons. That's when all of them start merging and conglomerating towards my area. One of them gets a backpack out and starts getting this thing out of his bag. I'm not even sure what it was. It must have been a lockpick. He shoves it in my door and starts jiggling with the lock. I'm standing there in horror, but to my relief, I notice that the chain is over the door. I feel so grateful for my paranoia now, and I know that they're very unlikely to get in. That's when I hear it. They've managed to undo the first lock. I stand there and go over to the kitchen to whisper to the telephone operator what's going on. She says the police are nearly there. And before they can do the second click, do I hear police cars pull up in front of our house. The gig is up. They run to the front door as quickly as they can, and I try desperately not to touch my door, because that way I can prove to the police what they've done. The police are more focused on trying to catch the guys. 3 of them escape into the dark, but 3 of them are apprehended. They get taken into the police car, and then a police knocks on the door. I ask him if he wants to take pictures of what they've done already, and he says that they've already done that, and asks to be let in. I'd explained to him what I'd heard and what I saw, and he says thank you for calling and asks if anything else had happened to my memory. I tell him no. I was so afraid. I was so close to being robbed. I can't believe it. I never thought anything like this would happen to me. Moral of the story is, well, it's better to be safe than sorry. It's better to lock your doors and be paranoid than not. I have friends who live in somewhat safer areas who say they never lock their doors at night, and I don't think I'll ever understand that. The remaining 3 guys were eventually caught, as their 3 friends ratted them out. I don't know what happened to the case. I was never kept up with the case, but I hope that these guys were charged. In any case, let's not meet again. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. The internet is still cutting out and going and coming back and going, and it's becoming very, very tiresome. I called the internet company last night, and, well, actually I called them 3 times, but last night was the only time that they would agree with me that there was a problem to deal with, that they would have it fixed by tomorrow. But then, just now, I got a message saying, hey, we're going to get it fixed within 72 hours, so once I finish uploading this video, so by the time you hear it, I'm probably going to be on the phone to the internet company demanding they come and fix it tomorrow morning. But who knows if they will actually do that, because, you know, they're oh so reliable. I'm quite convinced this is the 6th time they're going to have to come out and try and fix my connection, and I'm honestly so tired of it. I would have switched providers if they weren't the fastest in the area who can provide me the best service, which is great, but the problem is the best and fastest service is only the best part of the time. Anyway, ramble over. As always, a huge thank you to everyone who watches the video and likes the video and comments on the video. That really means a lot. And a special thanks to my amazing patrons, whose names can be seen on screen. If you'd like to join me on Patreon, you can get a heap of prizes for signing up at any of the varying tiers. It's all on there. Yeah, if there's something scary that's ever happened to you, you can also send it to my email or post it on my Reddit. The info, again, is in the description. And please don't forget to follow me on Twitter. We're so close to that 3,000, and I really want to give some stuff away. So let's make it happen, guys. But for now, it's time for me to sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.